after the fact. To get started here, before we jump into it, I do want to have Reno Stapleton start making his way up. Reno is our board president this year. We're going to have him open up in a word of prayer. The goal tonight is going to be to take you guys through some exciting stuff. Yeah, that should work. You just power it on. He's going to be on the wireless, Joe. Take you through some exciting stuff, things that have been going on behind the scenes this year at Calvary, what's coming next year and beyond. So we're pretty excited to share this information here with you guys tonight. But before we jump into that, let's turn it over to Reno and he can open us up. Yes. Later we'll have some question and answer.
Now it's on. So this is I want to yell at the administrator's mic. All right, remember that. All right,
Exactly.
But before we do that, let's pray. Heavenly Father, I'm just so amazed and awe at how you move and how you move in a body of believers. I am so excited to see what you're going to do with Calvary Christian School. I am just amazed at the way you've been moving and look forward to the things that you're going to do. And Lord, I just pray that we would be ever humbled, but ever present in your spirit. And that's what I pray for right now, that your spirit would be among us right now this evening. Give the administrators wisdom as they speak. Just give people understanding. Just give us peace, and I just look forward to what you're going to do in the future. We just thank you and praise you in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
All right, and if you've forgotten who we are, this is Dr. Bragg. He's the assistant head of school here, and I'm Mr. Hyde. I'm the head of school at Calvary. And again, the goal here tonight, we're going to take about 30 minutes and try to go through this. There's a lot of material, so realize we're also being as succinct as we possibly can, so we're not making this an hours-long session. But that's part of why we have the question and answer set up. So after the 30 minutes, feel free to ask whatever. And if you're streaming this, you can drop some comments on the video, and we'll look at those as well. So really, to begin, we want to go back a little bit to last summer, and we want to begin just with the time to catch up. So we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide there. And we know that the words up here are going to be small. It's okay if you can't read it. We do have this on our app. So if you do have the CCS app downloaded, right in the very top in the marquee, you'll see a link that will take you to these slides. So especially later, we're going to be looking at some pictures of property and things like that, so you can zoom in and out as you'd like to. But basically what this is doing here, it's going to begin with enrollment last year, enrollment 2021. About this time last year, it was looking like a pretty normal year. Inquiries, we have a funnel that we track our admissions process, and by late spring and early summer, it had just exploded. And when you came back to school this fall, especially if you were here last year, you're parking in the parking lot and you're going, "Ooh, this is busier than I remember. This is a lot of new families here," and it's been awesome. It's been great having those families with us, but there's certainly a space crunch. There's no doubt about that. So we match what was our biggest new enrollment year ever. We ended up sending about 106 new student applications, and it would be pretty normal for us to send 30. So that number was pretty large, and we ended up retaining a higher percentage of our own students than we've ever retained before. So we kept almost 96% of our entire student body. So those are great. It's exactly where you want to be as a school. But obviously, big numbers of new students coming in and everybody staying means even more of a space crunch. And we felt the need for space for years. But this year, it kind of really became, I don't want to be dramatic, but a crisis where if we don't add any, that was dramatic, so I can't say I'm not going to be dramatic and then be dramatic. But next year, if we don't have any type of solution, where we stand now, we have a class of K4 students that have nowhere to go, and we've never been in that scenario before. So on one hand, we're thankful how God has blessed and brought people to Calvary. We're thankful to see it grow. On the other hand, we're going, we need some, we have an urgent need.
Ryan, one of the things that a lot of people worried that, hey, this big growth is just happening because of some COVID thing or some issue like that, but we've not seen that to be true. People have come here, I don't know exactly what all their motivations, but they found that they really have fallen in love with our teachers and the whole system here. But the thing that really we've noticed is preschool, kindergarten, booming, and next year's enrollment looks like the same. So if we keep having that kind of student numbers coming in at the front end, we've got to get ready for it.
Well, and the COVID conversation is an interesting one because we had even wondered, the whole world of education was so thrown upside down with COVID. You kind of wonder, is this a short-term thing? Is this going to, everyone's going to come in and go out the back door? So that retention number last year that I just talked about was one that we were interested in. Going, how many of these families are going to stay? Are we going to see much lower retention because, hey, they're just here while their public school was going crazy and then they're going to leave immediately? But as I just mentioned, we ended up with the highest retention rate ever. So they came and said, hey, we like it. We're not planning to leave. So yeah, we definitely don't think it was just a blip on the radar, and we think it's a continuing trend. So that reality started some conversations between us and the leadership at Calvary Baptist Church. And we can't say enough good things about the leadership at Calvary Baptist Church. It's been a great relationship with Pat. And, the immediate discussions were really about solving those space needs. It was just, basically, what other rooms can we jump into? Are there any other spaces here at this site that we haven't used in the past that we can now begin using? And that kind of quickly turned into discussions not just on the immediate space needs, but also looking at the entire relationship between the church and the school. I mean, the first year was in 1979 when we had the first class here, and we haven't really evaluated that relationship since then. And there's a chart there on the right side of this screen. I'll actually now Dr. Bragg did a fair amount of history going through this process, so I'm going to let him kind of touch on this a little bit. But we're going to see a lot of things have changed, and this just became highlighted as we went through this process looking for space.
Well, it's kind of makes me think about Ryan gives me a call back in probably around May of last year. He says, I hear you're in the area. I just wonder if we could have a chat. So we start talking. And I just remembered the Calvary of the past, which was a little school of 150, 160 students. I knew that they had gotten into a high school more recently, but most of those 43 years in their history, there was no high school. And parents would come into the school and they would think, okay, we'll go for a few years, but when are we bailing out? And we'd say, well, you've got class through 8th grade. Why wouldn't you bail out at 8th grade? No. Because you only are going to 8th grade, we're going to probably leave at 5th grade or 6th grade or however that kind of works with a middle school program somewhere else. And so that was what I had in my mind. But as Ryan starts telling me about all that has taken place in that past couple of years and the growth and accreditation, and I was very impressed with Ryan's leadership. And so I got excited. Now, I've been a Christian ed leader for quite some time, been in several different schools. So this started to very much appeal to me as you sort of painted the vision of what God was doing here. And so as Ryan was saying, I had to do a little bit of research as he kind of put me on to some things about, hey, figure out what's going on with the space and what we can do about that. And I thought, well, I want to know what kind of an institution, what kind of organization this has been. So I had a lot of fun talking to Larry McFadden and Larry Zerniak and Taylor, John Taylor, and just different people who had led over the years. And of course, Pastor Willits has been here 25 or more years, and so he had a lot of history. But what you saw was a school that was in that range of maybe 150 on a couple of good years. It got up into the lower 200s, but this was not the same school as the 43-year past. So we're thankful for our history. We're thankful for the past, but we see God doing something really special right now.
And as you can see there, back at that start in 1979, you're talking about 3 full-time employees, three part-time. 25 students, $55,000 budget and I even think that $55,000 budget, a lot of that was paid by the church. You've got 3 rooms that you're used. You've got nothing with accreditation. There's no transportation. There aren't really any athletics. Scholarships were limited, if any. You compare that to where we're at today, and again, it's just making you go, well, these are clearly two different organizations. Today, 25 full-time staff, 18 part-time. That's only going to grow. 350 students, up to a $1.5 million operating budget. 28 rooms. So you just look at that right there. Yeah, the church started the school. It's a little school with 3 rooms. You kind of keep to yourself. It's a little bit of a different scenario today when you're talking about 28 rooms. And the reality of that is we're very supported by the church. We take up by far the most amount of space at this facility. But the church also, they have other ministries that they have to balance. How much do we continue to give to the school and how much do we reserve for doing other ministry? Because we kind of become one of the main, if not only, ministries they can do at certain times because 28 rooms, that's almost all of this entire site with the different buildings that we have here on campus. Accreditation has obviously opened up many doors that had not been open in the past, and that has just provided services that have made Calvary accessible for families to attend. So things like transportation, there are scholarships available that had not been available in the past, and then athletics has continued to grow the past several years, and now we're looking at OHSAA membership as well. So it's just a different organization than it was in 1979. So that right there, actually I think there's one more slide. If you click the next one, Joe. This just, again, I know it's going to be hard to see up there on the screen, but it's just going to paint a picture of recent enrollment. So it's going to give you a good idea from 2014 to current day.
Well, so it's been growing in these last several years, and to see that growth happening at the pre-K through kindergarten area, hopefully if we do a good job, those become students that will carry through the rest of their schooling experience. But Pastor Willits has been very supportive of the school. In fact, this church has made it so that the school could make it year after year after year. I mean, there were many times we had deficit budgets and the church just had to pay them off. Not to mention that there was no cost for the lease of the space, custodial help, just on and on the list goes. But Pastor Willits looked at us and said, you know what, we love you guys, but there's no more space. You need to find something else and somewhere else to go. But he said it in such a way, it was like this, and it was a little metaphor that Ryan and I keep using. It's like the student, the child, the school is a child, and it's growing up. And it needs to take on some different ways of acting and behaving. And I think that's what we see. We're maturing to a place where we're ready for another step or a next step.
Well, the next step is a big one. If we use that same metaphor, we're talking about the school growing up and the school moving out on their own and becoming their own person. So the next slide there is going to say same story but a new chapter. So as we continue to talk about space and what was needed here, like we just mentioned, it was clear the organization today it's just a different organization than it was 43 years ago. So the discussions continue to trend towards the school becoming a connected ministry to Calvary, but an independent ministry. So we would have our own 501c3. We would be completely independent, and that would come with a few changes. So those were all discussed for many, many hours. It was the main focus at the deacon retreat with the church last fall. So certainly not, I'm being pretty brief here. This was obviously not a brief discussion. We're talking about an organization that had been church, that is a big part of the church for decades. So it's not something that you do lightly, but at the end of the day, the deacon board, which is the church's operating board, they were all in favor of the church, again, growing up and going out on their own, or the school growing up and going out on their own, and church kids. This is a land that is out there on 68 where we have the soccer fields and everything. There's a lot of land out there. Maybe you didn't realize. And the section of land at the this, I mean, you can imagine there's been, here's a big curveball, here's something that could be a big hurdle, here could be a big hurdle, and just thankfully each one went, whew, that was a near miss. Well, we know it wasn't a near miss. We know that God's clearly been in it. One of the first things that we had to do is, now that we're, fully accredited, we have the Ohio Department of Education, there are some things, if we're going to open up another site, there are several things that we have to get approved to go there. We can't just pick a building and throw students there. And that was actually part of the problem. As Dr. Bragg started looking for places to rent, looked at about a dozen or so places. Many of them would have taken significant investment to get them up to code to where we could have had school there. But one of the things we have to do is the location has to be in the same district that we're in now. So when we heard that from the Ohio Department of Education, we thought, okay, well, it's not that far, but the school district lines are kind of weird because Indian Lake isn't that far away, down 68. Ben Logan is right there. So, what happens if it's in Ben Logan's district? Well, you have to recharter that school individually. Well, that was like a 2-year process, so we're really hoping we don't have to do that. And it ended up being inside of Bell Fountain's district, just barely. If we would have gone down County Road 9 a little bit farther, it would have been in Ben Logan, and that would have been a significant problem.
Well, it's on the very edge of the city property too. I mean, right next to it is property that's considered township property. So, and there's some advantages because it's in the Bell Fountain city. So again, God just keeps looking out for us.
Well, and another one, just found out minutes before we started, because apparently you have to have 100 feet of frontage. We've learned a lot about random rules that we never would have known before. You have to have 100 feet of frontage to get an address. So you look at our frontage. Right there. That's our frontage. 104 feet. Oh. We were a little bit nervous about that one.
Yeah. And if we were in the township, it would have had to have been 150 feet.
So another example of, things just coming together. Now, we're going to look at some of these individually, but basically we've got 4 different phases that we're looking to begin to build up this campus. And we know that it will take time, but we're excited to see how fast we can get the whole campus out there. And I'm going to do a little bit, I don't know if you can see this green highlighter very well, or laser pointer, but basically, there you go. We got dueling ones now. So we got County Road 9 down here, and again, we got the driveway. So this is going to be phase 1. So this is going to be the first thing that we're going to put in is the driveway up to some of this parking lot right here, and then this first small building. We're going to take a look at that first small building a little bit more. That's about a 7,700 square foot building. And, we'll talk more details here in just a second, I suppose. The second phase is north of this. So this is the elementary middle school building. And then below is the junior high school building. And then even below that, I was even surprised. I've been out the fields a lot. I've spent a lot of time out there. And if you can picture it, so this line right here, that's the power line. So when you're looking at the soccer field, that's kind of the top of the hill. And you kind of just assume, that's about the end of the property. You don't really do much beyond that. So only enough space for a full-size football stadium with track and bleachers and concessions, wrestling, weight room. There's a ton of space over there. I didn't know there was that much space over there.
Well, and we needed to do this. You're thinking, what in the world are you talking about football or wrestling for? Well, we got to see, is the 40 acres going to be adequate for us to have a 2 or 3 section school? That means every grade would have 2 or 3 sections. That means every grade would be somewhere between 40-some students and maybe even 70 students. Who knows? But if we have that kind of numbers, we've got to be ready for somewhere between 700 and 1,000 students. And so, again, not a pipe dream, because Ryan's got that already at preschool and kindergarten right now.
That's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
That is crazy. Let's go to the next slide. So this is going to look at phase 1 specifically. So again, we're just going to talk in a little bit more detail about these facilities. So what we have here in phase 1, it's a $1.8 million project. And again, a good chunk of this is just getting the site ready. So you've got your utilities wrapped up in that. You've got a lot of site work. There's a lot of trees out there currently. If you can picture it, again, it's that space behind the soccer fields. A lot of trees, a lot of dirt to move. The dirt moving isn't quite as bad as the front. The front has a pretty steep slope as you go uphill to that middle, but there's still a lot to move, and we're looking at a 7,700 square foot building. And actually, Joe, I'll let you go up to the top right, and we can take a quick peek at a design of this building. So 7,700 square foot. Now, in the long term, this building will become administrative offices. It'll be central. It will connect the two buildings, so everything will be inside. You won't have to go outside for anything. So we kind of see half of this remaining just administrative offices, and the other half being preschool space. So what we have here is 7 different classrooms and about 3 offices plus a reception area. So what we're looking at for this next year is a few first grade classrooms, a few second grade classrooms, and a few third grade classrooms.
And you did hear him right. This fall, this building, there's just a bunch of trees out there right now. This building by next fall. So
the pressure's on Reno. It's not on us.
Yeah, right.
You can zoom out a little bit there, Joe. So with this project, I just mentioned first through third grade out there. I mentioned the utilities, the driveway, the parking. We do have room to expand behind it as well. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but we continue to search other child care, even going lower than K4. And as we just mentioned, the goal is to complete phase 1 by September of this year. Now, the amazing blessing that is just crazy is that we can pay for all of this in cash now. So
and again, he did say that, right? We can pay for it, $1.7 million. Well, a big chunk of it is from a government funding source that we have that's kind of a lease-to-own kind of a plan. And then a lot of people at Calvary got excited about building over there even 10, 12 years ago. And so there's been some money sitting in the bank. And so just sources of finances have just been amazing. We had a family just before Christmas come over to Ryan's office and just lays a check down on his desk. And Ryan looks at it and goes, $40,000. And this was from a new family, a new parent. Just had their kids starting that fall. And so
it was on a waiting list.
What's that?
And was on a waiting list.
Yeah, right. Yeah, got him off the wait list quickly.
No, we didn't. We did not shirk the rules of the wait list.
So, but when we think about, we're going to talk about some big numbers on the next building, the building with the gym and so on, and I don't know how God's going to help us with all that, but what we've seen is God do 100 things. Why would we doubt Him on the next 20 or the next 25 or whatever? So we just keep seeing all these things come together. So no, we don't have it all figured out, but we just know that the Lord keeps moving us along.
So we'll look at phase 2 now. So again, phase 1, amazing blessing. We can pay for that in cash, thanks to what Dr. Bragg said. Of course, we talked about some help from the church covering some of those utility costs as well. And that should even leave us with a little bit of funding going into phase 2. So it's kind of weird in that we're going to be starting a building project and we're really starting raising the funds for phase 2 right away. Mm-hmm. So this building, again, is elementary. Right now, the numbers are more in the elementary than the older students. The older grades, they have some more specific requirements. I mean, you need your science labs and some more specific space. Elementary space is a little bit more simple to move out there for those age levels. So what we have, we do have a full-size gym in each of these buildings. So eventually we'll have 2 of a high school facility and then an elementary middle school facility. This is about a 34,000 square foot building. There's a new playground behind. There's also, at this point, a full loop is added. You probably noticed the driveway here, or the parking lot, was not really built for 350 students and buses.
Not at all.
I don't think it was built for that. And the families have made it work. I haven't had any accidents that I know of. But there's probably been a lot of close calls.
Yeah, and then
fantastic.
And then add 5 or 6, 7 buses.
Yes. So the bus loop specifically around the buildings will be a welcome addition. We'll have parent drop-off and parking in the front, and then the buses will be able to go around the back in just a separate much more designed for school use. And then we have some additional parking for this building, and we've also included some room for future growth. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with this place, years down the road, but if God continues to bring people to Calvary, we want to make sure there's some space there to say a wing could go here, and that could accommodate a third section for these classrooms if enrollment required that.
Yeah.
All right, you want to look at phase 3?
So we don't know a ton about where we're going with the high school. We just know a high school is a very sophisticated space to build. So how many years that's out, we'll just see how the Lord works. But we want a full-size gym in that elementary so we can use that for a while. But then this one would have a larger gym and maybe have, ag space, home ec space, choir room space, stage for musicals and plays. I mean, it's just a lot more kind of intricate square foot, and so it's going to be an even more costly building, but we'll just see how the Lord keeps providing. But as we keep saying, there's just so many things God has provided that we can't wait to see how this is going to go.
So if you saw the initial price tags on those, we're at $4.5 million for phase 2, and we're about $5.5 million for phase 3. We'll look at phase 4 next, and this is mainly going to cover athletics, what you saw on that initial screen. So again, what we've drawn into this plan is there is the stadium there that could be soccer, could be football. There's a track there around it with bleachers. There's a room for weightlifting, for wrestling, for concessions, and then some locker rooms as well, and an additional parking space. So again, we know that athletics, it does take an investment if you're going to have a full athletic program and
well, even the idea of growing, Ryan said it several times, we don't want to just grow to grow, but if our growth allows us to have better academic programs, more choices of courses, more athletic opportunities, more music, band, marching band, on the list goes. These are the things that we want to provide for our families, and of course, in every case, developed by a Christian teacher, Christian coach, and pointing people to the Lord. What a great way to continue to say to this community, there's something different going on at Calvary Christian School. I don't know if you had a chance to read a little article I wrote, but it was so much fun for me to go to Waynesfield Goshen and watch our basketball team play Waynesfield Goshen. Now, I know Waynesfield Goshen. I was a West Liberty grad. I love to beat Waynesfield Goshen wherever we got a chance. But they've been good over the years at different things. And here we were in a beautiful gym that probably seat 1,000 to 1,500. I went through a hallway with trophies and first place this, first place that, all over the place. And we were there to beat them by 10 or 15 points. It was fun. And they had a nice crowd. And you know what? At the end of that game, when we won, we asked the coach if we could pray with them. And they got out in the center and had a great time of prayer. And I thought, this is so cool. What a neat combination to let people know we're gonna play hard, we're gonna be competitive, but we're gonna be Christian. And it doesn't mean we're gonna be perfect, but we're gonna do this thing right. And then at the end, just to honor the Lord. It was neat. So I'd love to do something like that at a home court.
Well, it's such a unique opportunity as well. I mean, you just look at this area and there aren't a lot of Christian schools around us.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to drive 45 or so minutes in most directions. So, I mean, the opportunity for us to look really different as we get more into the community, and athletics is an easy one where we're in other schools all the time and we're competing. It's just an easy time where we're interacting with other schools frequently. There's just a great opportunity there for Calvary students to make an impact for God's kingdom.
And we never want to bash the public schools around us because we have a lot of good public schools around us, some very conservative, really good schools. But I'm telling you, some of the things that these public schools have to deal with is just crazy as they thinking about, curriculum mandates and just even issues about transgender and just on those issues go. So while I'm sorry that these kind of crazy things are happening in these other places, it really is putting a lot of pressure on us because people are saying, there's got to be a better way to educate my kid.
Well, and one thing that we also know, and Joe, you can go to the next slide there, is we know that our team is going to have to grow as well. We have the typical staff that we've thought of at Calvary Christian School for many years, and I know this is going to be difficult for you to read, but that team is going to have to grow pretty significantly. Obviously, this year we did bring in Dr. Bragg into a role that we've never had before. We brought on several teachers and some support staff as well. You can see some of the different roles we're looking at hiring even as soon as this year. We're looking at a few principals. My position has really always kind of been seen as a principal type of role in the duties that have been given. But in reality, most schools have a superintendent and a principal for a reason. There are different roles associated with those jobs, and you can't really do all of them together well. So we've really gotten to the point where we really need some principals in the elementary and middle school and then junior high school working really closely with the teachers. And we're also looking at an activities director this year. So you can think of that kind of like an athletic director, and we know that's one that we need to hire really more in the coming weeks and months than years. So that one's going to be coming quickly. We're looking pretty seriously at an enrollment and marketing director as admissions has continued to take off, and that wheel has just churned, and in large part because of word of mouth from our families, from you guys. Telling people, hey, I've had a great experience at Calvary. You should consider it. Going for a visit. We love that. Keep doing that. That's a lot of visits for me. That's like I'm a professional tour guide now, which isn't a problem because we want kids here in the school. But we just got to that point where we need someone to be a little bit more intentional with the enrollment and marketing efforts. A few nice things from the accreditation and some of the funds that are available for that. Jobs like a guidance counselor and a nurse, those could be potentially covered by those dollars. And even for next year, we're going to need a new admin assistant in the new building. And we know that we're going to be hiring a lot of new teachers. So a lot of new teachers and possible support staff for them.
Well, you think about growth and buildings, but the key to all that growth is getting the right people in and having people that love the Lord and love your kids and are expert in their fields. It was just really cool for Ryan and I to be talking about this and to have one of our teachers say, you know what, I think I would like to be in the administration. And we have one of our teachers that's actually getting ready to get their master's degree in educational leadership. And so what a wonderful privilege to see our own people want to grow in the area of leadership and take on more responsibility. That's a fantastic way to see our school grow.
So we're going to move on now and talk a little bit about our services, and this will be kind of a brief section here, but basically we just want to reiterate a few things. First of all, something that I said earlier, the first point just says that all curriculum continues to be taught through a biblical worldview. This is the heartbeat of the school, and I've still had a lot of questions after we were accredited, and there's new, transportation was new this year, and we became Ed Choice providers. And I've saw some questions like, can you guys still, is the state coming in basically and making you do anything? And no, they're not. We still continue to control all of our curriculum. We control all of our policies. So that's obviously very important to keep that, the heartbeat of the school and what we're all about. We as a second point, we put increased enrollment does provide flexibility to explore more opportunities for students, and Dr. Bragg touched on that before. But one of the great things that comes from grade, sizes of 40 to 50 compared to maybe 15, is all that you can do with that increased enrollment. I mean, we're talking. We can start looking at some extra clubs. We've already shown some personnel that we can look at bringing on. We can look at different activities and different ways we can get them to really hone in the skills that they can be
Well,
thriving
our
in.
teachers do a good job because they have to do so many things and wear so many hats. But the truth is, if you could wear less hats and you could be more professional at the few hats that you have. So those are the kind of things that we're excited to see that evolving now as we continue our growth process.
Child care is one of those areas as well that we briefly mentioned before. Currently, we go down to K4. One of the things that we've been researching is going down even further. So looking at a K3 program, looking at a K2 program, even down to newborn care. So we've seen some schools, got some head shaking right there. Yes, do that. We've seen some schools run some successful programs down to 6 weeks old. So that just takes it's just a different machine to have the child care that goes on that low. But with the new campus and the new facilities and the areas that we would have available to us to grow, we'd be able to put those in. And that could be an interesting area for us to look into. And then, of course, we have the accreditation services that, for the most part, are already ongoing. But, we've talked about transportation and some of those scholarship programs. And then another cool thing is that now we can host the ACT. So for our high school students, that's a pretty big deal. It's done no charge to them. Actually, our first ACT ever is next Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So our juniors are taking the ACT here during the week. So again, just something that we've never been able to do before, and now we can.
Now we're going to say more about some of these programs on Thursday as we kind of flesh out these scholarships and some of the opportunities and the way tuition and all that's going to work.
All right, getting to the end here, our impact. We'll slide over to that one. So basically, what impact does Calvary Christian have in the community once we have done these things? Biggest one, we put transformation in our community as young people are equipped with God's word. One of the things that's been important to us is, there's a lot of talk about growth and growing, and that's all great. But we want to be clear that we're not out here just trying to grow because we just want to get the school big so we can say, look how much the school's grown. Look how big we've made it. Aren't we something special? We don't want to do that. We don't want growth for growth's sake. But we do want to see more change. I definitely want to see more young people in this community be in an environment where they're going to be pushed towards God, and they're gonna learn His word. I do want to see that change. Yep. So we don't want to grow just to grow and go, wow, look at us, aren't we special? But yeah, we want to see transformation in our community. Again, we get to see our teachers every day, and having your kids be, it's a lot of time they're in school. 17,000 hours is about the number that we have in K through 12 education. That's a lot of time to be influenced by whatever their teachers are going to be covering. We got a great staff here. They are teaching your kids awesome things. So I want to see as many kids as possible in that environment with those teachers. And then we also included here, we're aiming for about 5 to 6% of eligible enrollment, which would give us a school of roughly, we'll say 700 to 1,000 students. And that number is huge for us. Yeah. It's not too big when you look around at some surrounding schools, but for us that's a big jump. Right. And then we also have financial flexibility to operate a thriving organization that's a blessing to our community. And we also want to have a continued partnership with the local churches as CCS families continue to be involved. And we know it doesn't happen all the time, but there are times where families will come in, and of course we want our families to be, we want them to be plugged in somewhere. We still do get a family testimony. We still have a church recommendation form that if you're in continuous enrollment, you got to do that again. Mm-hmm. There are times where a family will come in and they'll say, hey, I used to go, I haven't really been plugged in lately. Okay, well, we'll encourage them, get plugged in again, start fellowship with other believers regularly. We're called to do that. We want to be obedient to that, and sometimes the school can be used to bring a family back into church, and that's an awesome thing. All right, anything you want to add there?
No, I think we now finish with kind of a call to action. I really like how Ryan finishes this off, that we want you guys to be a part of some next steps.
So the first thing is this Thursday, 6 o'clock. Again, we talked about a few programs in here, some admissions stuff, stuff like Ed Choice. John Peterson is a new program that we just became providers for, and this is for students with special needs that are on IEPs and things like that. It's going to provide some services that we've never been able to provide to those students, so we're really excited to be able to serve even more students and bring them into a Christian environment. For you guys here or watching this live or on replay, we want you to pray for wisdom for us, again, that God would continue to show where he wants. I mean, this isn't our school. This isn't Ryan's school. This isn't Dan's school. This is God's school, and we just want to go where he's taken it. So continue to pray for wisdom, and that we would just take those steps that he wants us to take. And pray about giving opportunities. We think it's going to take a village to make this new campus a reality. But we definitely want each of our families to just pray about how you could be a part of that story. And we're just thinking about what the impact in this community, if you look at that campus and you think of that campus being there in its entirety, just the blessing that could be to this community for who knows how long. I mean, we're talking about something for decades that could bless families, that could transform families with God's word. It's amazing. It's an amazing project to get involved in. And then lastly, we want you to tell others and help us spread the word. Christian education in Logan County is more accessible than it's ever been. Again, especially when you consider all the new services that are there for our families, whether it's, I've dealt with many families that wanted to come, but they couldn't get transportation to work, and now that's not an issue. Finances, well, that's a pretty beefed up system now with some of those scholarships are available. So really, I've never worked with a family that, hey, everything was good to go, and they just couldn't make the finances work. God pulls it together. So it's more accessible than ever. So we ask you guys, who can you speak with about Calvary? And then who do you know that might be interested in contributing to a project like this? We're just, again, just like the story of our school family coming in and saying, hey, you haven't even really asked for any funds yet, but hey, here's a check, put it towards the building. I don't know, you just never know where, God is going to prod their hearts, yeah. And they're going to come into a
We'll be
story
talking
like this.
more about some fundraising opportunities and different faith promise kinds of events. So that's all down the road, I'm sure, but just sort of set you up that God is on the move, and we want to participate. Ryan told me an interesting story from a school not too far from here where they said, we had an opportunity 10, 15 years ago where it seemed like we were booming, but we kept putting people in waiting lists. We never really had a plan to get them in another classroom or build new buildings or anything. And then within a few years, they lost that growing number. And it's sort of like it's a window of time, and if you don't capitalize on that, you may lose your opportunity. So hearing that story was good for us as we think, we want to be faithful to the next step that God might have for us.
And I think that's the key there, is if God's telling us to move, this stuff has been an immense amount of time to work through all the different things that have been involved in this. But if God's telling us to move, we want to move. And we certainly don't want to be in an area where everything is pointing towards take this to the next step, bring in more families. Everything is pointing that direction. And we don't want to be the ones who are sitting here going, but we're comfortable. This is how it's worked forever, and we're happy with this. So we just want it to stay how it is. If God's telling us to move, we want to move. And we tried to be kind of as quick as we can. Probably still took a little bit longer, but we want to be quick and succinct. But maybe don't let our monotone voices, I guess, hide the true excitement that we have about this. Because, we are just incredibly excited about the possibilities that this has in Logan. Logan County's never had an organization like what we're talking about here with the new campus over at over at the North 68 property. It's never existed in Logan County. So to think that we could be the ones that jump into that vision and make that happen, not just for our own kids and for our families and friends, but for people, decades down the road, that could be a blessing to them. That's super exciting to me.
Yeah, and I'm doing my dream job, so I'm very excited. I mean, I love the combination I get to do. And by the way, anybody wants to run track, I'm looking for tracksters right now. The kids are like, not this again. But I'm just saying, we are having a ball. This is big time fun. Now, I think we're trying to get some questions, right, Ryan?
Yep. We do have 2 mics here, and I don't know if anybody here will have questions. If you do have a question, feel free to step up. We have the mics, so they'll be able to hear you on the stream as well. Feel free to come on up, and we'll pull up some of the live stream comments as well. Sorry, just push the button at the bottom, and you'll see a light come on.
Okay. All right.
There it goes.
Here we are.
Good.
Logistics. Okay. So obviously you said 1st through 3rd grade. How's that going to work? What about buses? And I mean, how's that going to work on dismissal? And when we got junior high and high school, and how's that going to work for parents that can't be at 2 places at one time?
Is it good if we say we don't know yet?
What's that?
Is it good if we say we don't know yet?
Now, welcome to my life.
That's probably not a good answer, but that's probably the true one for
Well,
me.
you're
No.
used to the late Lamberts anyway, so
So-
guess what? The 3rd grader's going to be sitting there for a while.
Right.
So we know that 2 facilities, an upper campus, lower campus, whatever in the world you want to call it, logistically is going to create about 50 headaches and problems that we're going to have to solve.
Right.
Some of those are specials and cafeteria. Some of those are the dismissal time. We may have to get creative with that. With buses, we know that we can work those schedules. We may have to stagger them a bit. We don't have all the details right now, but those are all things that we will certainly be working through to make sure that it's a feasible route between, for the families that have multiple pickups.
One of the things on our list is to get a bus. So we may have some busing that goes on, but maybe not always, but maybe a lunch thing or chapel or whatever. So there's a lot of things that we're looking at. There'll be some hassles, but it's not a hassle that other
Skytram.
schools. Yeah, right.
Skytram.
But other schools deal with this too. So, and it's, by the way, it's right at a mile away. So it's really a pretty close
Track runners.
Right.
Practice.
Well, and I think another important part of this is the first building out there, again, for phase 1, that does help us with our immediate need for space. That actually allows us to split up to, I think it's 7th grade, that we can split if we had to. But
And
that's
you're keeping
also...
K4 and kindergarten will stay here. Still,
Yeah,
right?
we're still
That's the
imagining
plan.
K4 and kindergarten to stay here. Now, that does open up some additional classrooms here in this wing if you picture 3rd grade out there, 2nd grade out there, 1st grade out there. So that allows some extra space for middle school to step into, where that's where those classrooms come from. But we also know that whatever we do out there, and those are problems we're going to have to solve, we know that that's not the end game scenario where we're going, yes, we've got phase 1 done, we're finished, this is the perfect scenario. Ideally, we're in that, first group out there for a very short period of time.
We've got crazy timelines in our head about maybe in a year and a half or 2 years at most, there is a building that's got all K through 6th graders out there, a gym. So this, and there'll still be some hassles even then, but that will really solve some problems if that could only be like a year and a half or 2 year window, which is possible. Other thoughts or questions?
And if you're on the stream, feel free to drop comments in here as well.
I had a couple questions regarding the leadership. I guess up until this point, it seems like the church has been setting the direction, but since this is going to be moving to a category, say category 2, is there going to be a school board, or are there going to be meetings that parents can attend? There was a lot of information shared tonight, but I think you guys have been working on this for a long time, but as a parent, it doesn't feel like we kind of know what's going on.
Yeah, good question. So he asked there about Category 2 school board meetings and...
Is there a board? How many people are on the board? Just basic questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So we do have a school board right now. We have 6 members, plus there is a representative from the deacon board, which is the church oversight board that sits on the school board. We do have a visitor forum at the beginning. So the sessions are closed themselves, but if we have someone who wants to step in to ask a question or present something, we'll have people come in and present if you would like to. So that visitor forum is there in the beginning, and that will remain in place as we're at Category 2. Now the big difference as a Category 2 is that we'll have a school board that operates the school completely. Right now, in reality, we run pretty independently. The deacon board is technically over the school board and the structure, and since we're a ministry of the church, but they allow the school to run pretty autonomously. But as we go to Category 2, it'll be the school board that entirely runs the school.
So we are right now in the middle of putting our 501c3 together, and that has bylaws and vision statements and school learning outcomes. I mean, all this is being put together with Ryan and the board working at it, putting that board group together, and the process of application and the expectations of every board job, so that all the things that Ryan talked about will be sort of in the legal documents, so that the school will be, as its mission says, from now till who knows how long.
Okay. And I know there's also some, there's been a lot of ed choice people come. Let's see here. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, there's some pending lawsuits with ed choice. Is that, how dependent are we? Can this plan see through if those lawsuits succeed?
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
Nobody knows, but.
So he asked about Ed Choice, and there are current lawsuits against it. So Ed Choice was established in the early 2000s, and this is a program that provides a few routes for families to qualify, and you qualify for certain scholarship amounts through Ed Choice. It is currently, now public schools have never been very friendly towards school choice programs like Ed Choice. There's currently a lawsuit. We met with
Troy
McIntosh, who he works in Columbus for the Ohio Christian Education Network, and they're very involved in the ins and outs of what's going at the State House in Columbus. And I know they currently are not concerned with the lawsuit from the state. The reality is it's a very popular program across the state. The sentiment of families across the state right now is very supportive of school choice. I think one of the last surveys we saw was 75% of the families in the state approved of school choice rather than just continuing to fund the system. We don't expect that to go anywhere. We don't expect the lawsuit to be successful. But with Ed Choice, I mean, one of the nice things with that, because we're roughly 30% of the school that has qualified, and a small number of that has been new families that have come in. A lot of it has been current families that were already here that were on financial assistance in some form of another, now could qualify through this route. So is it possible that it goes away someday? It's theoretically possible for sure. We don't see that happening right now, and actually right now, you may have seen this in the, we put this resource in the school app. We've put the backpack bill in there, and I know the people at OSIN are very, they feel good about this. The mood is very in favor of school choice. And this bill, if you haven't seen this yet, it would basically allow funding to follow your child. So if you attended a private school like Calvary, just by attending, you would qualify for a scholarship, and it basically completely abolishes the Ed Choice system, and it says, well, instead of these people qualifying, everybody qualifies just because you're attending there. and scholarships are funded for you automatically. So if we had to pick which way was more likely to happen, especially in the next few years, because again, who can guess what's going to happen 5 to 10 years? Government may go crazy, and they may put tons of crazy laws on us, and we say, look, we got to back off. We don't agree with that. In good conscience, continue to go on, and we have to pull the plug and reevaluate at that point. But we don't want to operate in fear of that happening, but it's certainly a possibility. But again, what I mentioned before was which way would we see that pendulum swinging? We'd see it swinging more towards school choice and backpack bill rather than successful lawsuits of ed choice and those opportunities going away.
We'll talk more about this on Thursday, but it seems that the trend, like Ryan said, is towards choice. The studies say that when you have choice in a state, and there's several states that are doing it, when you have choice in a state, not only does the Christian school benefit, but the public school gets better. Because when people are knowing that there's a choice involved, everybody ups their game. So it's just interesting that this is not about Christian school, it's about education to the state of Ohio. So that's just an interesting side there that everybody does a lot better when they know that there's competition in the game.
Thanks for your answers.
Thank you. We did get a question online from Andrea Keller, so I'll read this. She asked, class size has always been a selling point for us and other families. How do you keep or get back to smaller class sizes? So class sizes for us is certainly something that we're cognizant of, I guess I'll say that. Some of our class size this year, which of course has prompted some of these discussions, are bigger than we would prefer, and we don't want that to be a long-term, thing that is happening here. Kind of along with a higher enrollment and all the benefits that go along with that are certainly there. And from a class size perspective, the teacher themselves is definitely a bigger impact marker than just strictly class size. If you have the right teacher with 15 to 25 people, your kid can still learn. They can learn effectively. There's not just a magic formula that, well, if your class has 12, that means it's a great year and your kid's going to learn effectively. The teacher is a bigger deal than just the size of the classroom. But of course, planning for the different sections and throughout the school is certainly a measure to make sure those class sizes stay around 20 to 25. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There. I know you said you'd address the financials, but just high level, are you thinking that you'll raise the funds per phase before building the phase, or maybe doing a feasibility study to do a major capital campaign?
Well, we'll see ourselves doing a major capital campaign, and we'll have to do a lot of research. What kind of finances does Logan County and our families have? What can we raise up front? Where would a mortgage fit if it needs to? So there'll be a lot of thinking about that. Once we get through this vote on March the 13th, we'll move a little quicker on some of that. We might even have a kind of an introductory meeting about that financial part, maybe even here in April or May.
Yeah.
It was. It's not on.
Okay, so I think this is great. Thank you guys for all the work that you've done on it. I just have a question. I think I've heard a lot about construction and holdups. I'm actually working in a school building with construction right now. Hearing the September date, I'm just thinking, can that really be pulled off? And so I'm curious to know if we've thought through, we go ahead and accept enrollments to fill a bigger space, but then that space isn't ready come fall.
What's that? Yeah, no, I don't think we got to put him on spot.
Right? But I mean, there are a lot of shipping and
we've
right
got to
now
have
with supplies.
some contingency plans. We know that, and so we're looking at other places to use. Ryan's been thinking about even what should be the start date of school, and so we've got a little more homework to do before we can really land on all those. But you're exactly right. We've got to be ready for who knows what.
And I love a vision of trying to bring Christ to lots of students and children in Logan County, but I'm also looking out for my children. And I just want to ensure that they're going to have a good quality education in the fall that's not too overwhelmed or crowded or, space that's constricted. So I was just curious, and I know you don't have all the answers now, but at least if you have some of the questions that are out there, it can maybe guide some, further thought and feedback out to us families.
Yeah. No, we definitely appreciate that. We've certainly talked through, contingency B, C, what happens. Right now, we're looking at, it's roughly a 5-month project. So we know it's going to be close, and we need everything to really go well to start on time. And we know even with contingency B, we're still looking at this build, which gives us a lot of immediate relief. We have some options that are there in place, hoping that it can be very short term. Let's just say this project is delayed by a couple months, and we're in October, November, not September. Well, we know we're going to have a few months at a contingency before we can move into the first new building. So we're certainly looking through some of those options that we have.
I appreciate the architecture designs. Is there actually like a bid that's going out for the project? How far into the process are you at this point into building? Do you have a company that's going to be doing the construction? Is that already planned, underway, secured?
Yeah, so we do have a company that is ready for the construction. Really, right now we're waiting for that final vote from the church on March 13th. And when that is official, we're going to begin drawing up the lease agreements and getting that finalized. Because of the funds that are involved in this, we have to coordinate with the ESC and our construction company to begin that process. But it is underway.
So it looks like that the space where the K-3 will be eventually is probably going to be turned into something after the students move to the larger elementary.
Probably.
I'm curious to know that space there, how equivalent is it to the space that's here currently for those grades? Is it larger, smaller?
Yeah, those classrooms are a little bit bigger than what we have here currently.
Okay, so they'll be gaining a little space out there?
Yeah, and then in the bigger building, where the gym is, those classrooms are even bigger again.
Okay, but just thinking about the space for next year, they wouldn't be losing any space. They would just be losing access to some specials. Is that what I'm understanding?
It would be harder. We would still have specials. We would just have to be a little bit more creative in how we do it, whether we
move the teacher.
Yeah.
And
the teacher might have to come to the classroom.
Is busing students?
Say it again.
It's busing students back to this campus?
It's possible. We're not completely sure yet, but it's a possibility that we've thrown out there. And it may not be an everyday thing, but it may be a special event thing. Maybe we want to bring them back for chapel, because it's going to be hard to do a chapel service out there. We want to bring them back for that. Maybe occasionally, what we don't want is them to feel disconnected. So we're looking at ways we can occasionally bus back for events here and there.
My kids love the bus, but I guess my concern is just the loss of instructional time, that we're investing in, and wanting to make sure that we're getting everything and not losing something because they now have an added. Let's face it takes a while to get all the kids on the bus, I know, and then make sure they're all accounted for. And so, I guess I'm just concerned about that loss of instructional time that they might have.
The thing that I want you to know is that Ryan, I thought was a great idea to have this meeting and sort of have our first chance to share. But I think from now on, hopefully the communication can keep going back and forth as we continue to learn more from step to step and communicate what we're finding out and get some feedback.
Yeah, and I won't monopolize anymore. Thank you for the time. My last just real quick question is there an opportunity for parents to have a voice in this process? Are the board meetings closed or are they open?
So the board meetings themselves are closed, but we do have that family or that visitor forum at the beginning. So you can just send me an email and we can get it on the
Are board
agenda for the
meetings
night.
advertised or posted, or is that something we would have to ask to know about?
They are the third Thursday of the month, and that's something that I've probably done a poor job just posting out there for everyone to see easily. It's probably something we can just easily add in the app.
I hadn't
or
thought
something
about
like
it
that.
until, the discussions, we heard things in the fall, and I'm like, I don't even know how they're governed. And
Right.
here, we've been here, this is our third year, and so I know you wear a lot of hats, so, it is what it is. But yeah, if we could learn about that so we can participate, that would be
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So the question here was about board makeup, family voting. So we won't have a school-wide voting, kind of like maybe you'd see in the public realm where so-and-so runs for school board, but there would be a nomination process that is taken to the school board, and the school board would vote on and bring those members in. And again, those meetings would stay closed themselves, but there's that visitors forum where if you ever wanted to visit, anybody's welcome to come in.
Excuse me, you canceled your vacations for this summer yet? Because it sounds like you're going to be busy. Question on, so March 13th sounds like a big day. Are we going to have maybe a follow-up to this, maybe early May, late April or whatever, so we can maybe kind of all get together and understand exactly where we're headed? And then also, just the hiring. You're going to obviously need more staff, like you had said. Has feelers been put out, or is this something, again, all come in this summer and figure out by September or whatever? But I'll sit down and listen. Thank you.
Yep, good question. So on hiring, we definitely have had we've had feelers out there already for some of those positions. We've already had a handful of conversations and interviews, whatever you want to call them. We've reached out to some universities as well, and we're in some education fairs where we'll be meeting with some candidates for some of these, especially teacher openings that we know that we're going to have. Man, what I missed?
I think that sounds right.
Did that answer it all? What
I mean,
missed?
this is the right timing. This is when people are starting to think about next year's, as far as the hiring process. So we're right in that sweet spot.
And I remember the first part of your question now. So just talking about the timing of being in communication. So it's kind of been a tough thing as we've worked through all of this. We haven't really been able to even share anything because it's all just been half discussions, and it's changed so many times. So you want it to be pretty firm before you share. So really this is about the first opportunity we've had where, it was just a few weeks ago, we formally kind of explained everything to the church body here and let them know you're going to be voting on this pretty soon. So now, okay, they all know those steps are taken. Now let's schedule time, bring this to the school family, let them all know what's going on. So from here, it'll definitely be easier to be able to update as updates, become available and necessary. We can just throw them out, and I don't know that we'll have to have town hall style meetings like this, but it could be easily sent out in newsletters, or it could be sent out in video updates, or whatever shape it takes. It will definitely be easier to update from here. And we have talked about some events for the spring already, again, talking more about phase 2 launch, and those could be easy chances to update people as well on where we're at in the process.
That's a great question. We keep on trying to think through what's the best way to do the business of Christian education. And we want that Christian education to be able to pay for itself. We want that to be able to pay the teachers what they deserve to be paid. There's just a lot of pieces and parts to make that machine work. And, discipline in the classroom, the right size of classrooms per classroom, just over and over it goes, that we just have a balancing act. you are hearing, I hope, the heart of Ryan and myself. We're going to try to get to you things like our bylaws and our statement of faith, and so you'll get the tone of what we want to see this school to be. It is a tricky thing to change because that means it's different than what it is, and if you came here liking what it is, then what is this change going to be? So it's a risk on our part to say to you, we're excited about it, we believe you're going to like it, but you haven't actually seen it. There's some things that you would also say that you like about the place, but there might be a few things that you'd say, I hope it does change. And, I'm even thinking about some of the kiddos that have had to never have their own home gym. And we go to a little gym that's just a little cracker box. And I mean, I'm glad for that. But my point being that there are some great things that we would like to do that are going to be a part of that change too. Will you go into your second or fourth grade classroom and know every kid or know every parent of every kid? Maybe not the same that way. I don't know. But I think you're going to find a lot of good people in Logan County and surrounding that are going to be a part of what you're being a part of. And so I don't want you to hide it just for you and your family, but to have it to something that other people can be a part of. So I know that's complicated. So I guess the best I can say is just trust your leadership that we really do care about this process.
Well, and we're still looking at, around classroom size of 20 to 25, which in the elementary world especially has been pretty consistent with what we've had for a while. Obviously, those grade levels have gotten bigger, which is why we're splitting the classrooms again. So the classrooms themselves will stay a similar size. And what we've said many times is we're going to continue to do. We want to do our best to grow a small school. We love that small school feel where people know. Again, I know Mrs. Lemons is over there. We've added a lot of people here at the school, and I'm pretty sure everyone who comes in, she'll greet you by your first name and say hello and kind of give that small school environment. We still want those interactions with the teacher. Again, if you're talking a classroom of 20 to 25 students, that's not anything that's overly crazy from what we've done in the past. And again, we feel good about our teaching staff, and that that's a number that they can continue to connect with. And when you're connecting with those kids, it's going to continue to feel like a small school. So we never want kids to just fall through the cracks, quote unquote, where they're not getting the attention that they deserve. We want to make sure that we're growing the staff at the same time we're growing the school and making separating the classroom so they are still getting that individualized attention like they had in the past. Any other questions tonight? All right, we'll close it.
All right, well, thank you for coming, and I know this messed up dinner and bedtime and all kind of things. Let's just have a real quick closing prayer. Lord, thank you for our time together. Thank you for what you are doing in our school, and help Ryan and I and other staff members as we jump in and figure out what does it mean to serve our people, to love our people, to point them to you and your word. And we just believe, Lord, that you have some great things in store for us, and we want to be faithful to what you have for us. So thank you again for the good questions and for the hearts of the people in front of me. And I just pray we have a great rest of our night in your name, Lord. Amen.